Welcome to the Behind the Girl Boss podcast, where every woman's journey takes center stage. Join us in this safe space as we explore the ins and outs of business, career, mental health, the music industry, and more. Whether you're a go-getter or a dream chaser, we've got stories for you. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for an exclusive backstage pass. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and entertained. Welcome to the ride. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. We are in the last week of August, which is actually crazy, and I can't believe literally summer is basically done and it's fall, but fall is also my favorite season ever. It's like the best season to ever exist. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited for fall weather, fall vibes, just being like cozy vibes, baking, the leaves changing colors and falling. Like I'm just so excited. But anyways, that's literally the only updates I have. I don't have many things to share, but we're going to get into our little mantra of the day. So today's mantra is take this moment, relax your shoulders, relax your jaw, inhale slow, exhale slower, soften your gaze, now be, just be. I feel like this really resonates with the episode that's going up today. And I feel like a lot of us have to just learn how to be like slower in life and live a little slower, live more in the present, and just slow down. I feel like myself, I guess, if we're going to talk about it, myself, um, I'm always thinking about like the future and just like the next goals I have and all these things. And I need to just learn to like slow down a little bit and like live in the present and be in the present and just be happy with what's going on in my life right now. So again, take this moment, relax your shoulders, relax your jaw, inhale slow, exhale slower, soften your gaze. Now be, just be. I love this. I feel like I saw it and I was like, this is something I need to tell myself, so I'm going to tell everyone else as well. But I'm very, very, very excited for today's episode, and I hope you guys are as well. Today we have Palak Dave on the podcast. She is an entrepreneur, speaker, and author of the book Beautiful Everydays: A Guide to Living in the Here and Now. And she's also the founder behind the brand Embiria. On this episode, we spoke all about fostering meaningful connections and building authentic friendships. We spoke about the significance of face-to-face interactions in a digitally driven world. We spoke about the power of shared experiences. We also spoke about the concept of intentional living and slow living. And we spoke about incorporating offline experiences into daily routines to enhance our quality of life. I really learned a lot from this episode, and I think a lot of you can also learn a lot from this episode. It was such a fun conversation, and I really enjoyed it, and I think you guys will as well. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. So we have another guest with us. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Palak, and I'm the founder of Embiria. Embiria means experience, and the entire brand is built on a mission to help people slow down and savor their lives. I think that in our hustle culture and how busy we all are, we don't take time to do that. So through Embiria, I've built a social club for women where you can come and connect off of social media and get back to being social again. I take a lot of cues from European lifestyle and different cultures where we just have forgotten how to rest. And so I
Mhm.
launched a membership community that brings women together so that we can connect online and offline, but in a way that feels really nourishing and good. And I'm also the author of Beautiful Everydays, which is a guidebook to living in the here and now. And it's full of beautiful activities that you can do to get offline and just reconnect with yourself.
Awesome. I'm excited to dive into all that and learn more about it. But before we do that, I like to do a little hot seat segment to kind of just break the ice and a little fun facts. So currently you live in Toronto in Canada. If you could pick up and move anywhere, where do you think it would be?
Yeah, I'm a huge traveler. I've like traveled to almost 50 countries, but I
Wow.
actually split my time between Toronto and Austin. So
Okay.
Austin would be one of the places that for sure is on my list. I just love spending time there. The community is amazing, but I'll always say Italy because it's just, I used to live there when I was younger. I went to school there for a bit, and
Mhm.
I feel like you could just romanticize your life there. You go there, and it's like, why not live in a gorgeous villa and eat delicious Italian food all day?
No, literally, I was there this summer and just the vibes there are so different. And compared to like Canadian culture and over there, it's just, I
Yeah.
feel like it's more like relaxed.
It's so relaxed. That's the whole thing that I want to like encourage people to live that way because these people are living like that every single day. They're
Yeah.
making the most of their lives. And here we are on this hamster wheel and forgetting that we actually have moments in our day that we need to appreciate and slow down and truly savor. And I don't think we do enough of that here. So I
Yeah.
like that they naturally do it there and it encourages people to do that when they visit there. So that's why I probably picked that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the next one is do you have a life mantra or motto that you live by?
Yeah, I kind of live by the phrase live fully, and I've expanded that to be like live beautifully, and that really means just
Hmm.
taking advantage of your day to day and really living in the present moment and filling your life with experiences that you love and that really fulfill you.
Yeah. Love that. And the last one is who's a celebrity or creator that always keeps you inspired?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with, do you know Joanna Gaines from the Magnolia brand?
Oh, I don't.
Okay, so Joanna Gaines is, I mean, she's super multi-passionate, but her and her husband Chip have this like home renovation company. They built it into a huge brand. She's an author. She writes multiple books, cookbooks. She does house flips and she's a designer, but she also just has a really beautiful brand that embodies like being a homebody and just taking advantage of, gathering with people that you love and enjoying those slow and simple moments. And so she's someone I definitely look up to for all the things that she represents.
I love that. I'm definitely going to check her out. But as someone who does create on social media and posts a lot of their life online, a question I like to ask a lot of people is what's something that you do for fun for yourself that many people may not know that you actually do?
Oh, this has been interesting. It's been like an adventure I've had over the past little bit is to reclaim fun and what that
Mhm.
means because I don't think I get enough fun in my day. I really like to cook, which maybe people know that I do or don't, but I like to cook. And I also have recently taken up pickleball. And I know that's like become
Okay.
a trendy thing, but I feel like I think the reason it's trendy is because it gets you out of your head and into just like doing an activity that's pretty accessible. You don't need to be a pro or a athlete to do it. You can just like get out there, have some fun. You kind of just forget about your worries for a while and you're really immersed in the activity. So I've been
Hmm.
having fun playing that lately.
No, I love that. So going a little bit back in your career, you were an award-winning marketer at companies like TIFF and Indigo, and then you ended up founding your own company, like you said. What made you kind of want to do that whole shift?
Yeah, I was in corporate for about 10 years and there was multiple things that sort of led me to that. But one of them I would say is that I kept switching between industries. So I would be
Hmm.
in marketing, but I would kind of go from retail to nonprofit to banking and I would try it all. And I just felt really unfulfilled. Like I would do a stint at each company
Yeah.
for about 3.5 to 4 years. And it felt like when I got to that 3.5 year mark, it felt like the same thing, just a different industry. And
Yeah.
I really started to like dig deep and wonder, is this all there is? Like, is this all I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I was still so young in my career. I was in my 20s and I started to have that question where I felt like I was meant for more and I was wondering what that more could be. And that's also at a time where I was really craving community in my life. I found
Hmm.
that I would go out and I would go to like fitness classes and hang out at these different wellness places, but no one would really talk to each other. Like we would go to
Yeah.
the classes and go in and go out. And I'm like, what's the point of all of us gathering in person if no one's going to say hi or
Hmm.
hang out? Then I might as well just do this at home. And so I thought that, especially being in Toronto in a busy city, that if I was feeling that way, there must have been other people that were craving community. And that's where the whole idea of Imberia and running pop-up events around the city to bring people together came about. And that's how I started to like dabble in wanting to launch my own thing. But it was an idea where I had it was like a project on the side. I didn't necessarily see the vision for it turning into a business. And now here I am 7 years later and going through many iterations and pivots and the evolution of it. But it fully has remained true to what its mission was. But it's
Hmm.
just interesting to see how it's like taken shape over the years.
Yeah. And how did you kind of come up with the concept and how did it like unfold to where it is now?
Yeah, my very first idea was since I wanted to foster the sense of community, I thought I could just run a pop-up event that combines like a bunch of things I love. So it was
Hmm.
actually a yoga and a brunch event. So what we
Okay.
did was like a really super slow, nourishing yoga class, but it was at this gorgeous loft space. I wanted it to be different and not just like your any fitness
Hmm.
studio vibe. So I got this like gorgeous white loft that looked kind of like an old church, and did it there. And then after that, we all came together for this really delicious brunch. And we just like had this communal brunch. We got to connect. I guided people through like conversation activities so that they could connect with each other. And it was so great that literally I had to tell people to leave at some point because I'm like, okay, event's done. Like we got to wrap up and leave the space. And it just gave me the momentum I needed to feel like, oh, this is something people want. This is before I had an Instagram account or a website.
Yeah.
I just like threw up an event on an event ticketing platform and it sold out. And that really gave me the like affirmation I needed to say, okay, I think people want this. And so it started with the one event and it really quickly was like a domino effect to say, I could do anything that brings people together, whether it's like a creative activity over food and drinks, over a wellness activity. It didn't really matter. It's just people are looking for spaces to connect and gather that are
Yeah.
outside of work or home.
How did you go like about marketing it, or did you literally just post it on the website and then people just bought it?
Yeah, I posted it on this ticketing platform. So I was using Eventbrite at the
Hmm.
time, and people were obviously searching for things to do. And so they happened to find it through there. And then I ended up working with a few small businesses to help me
Okay.
with the event. So they sponsored it through the food and then they promoted it. And it honestly, it was probably one of the easiest times of my business to attract people because I think I wasn't in my head about it. I think the longer that you go on, the more you can sort of think big picture and you
Yeah.
start to convince yourself why you maybe shouldn't do something. But at the beginning, I was naive. I was just like throwing spaghetti at the wall, being like, okay,
Yeah.
let's see what works. And I think that's why it allowed me to be super creative and just go for it without the fear because I
Hmm.
wasn't tied to an outcome. Whereas now I think I'm way more methodical. I plan things out a bit more. I'm maybe not as risky as I was back then, but it worked out for that time. And I always give advice to business owners or people wanting to start a business saying, just do it. Like just try it out, see what works, because the more you get in your head, the less likely you are to actually execute on something.
Yeah, for sure. And I know a big part of your business is like these events and stuff, but do you have other like sections to it? I know there's a membership as well. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we just launched the membership club. So it's called Imberia Social Club. The acronym is ESC, kind of like escape.
Hmm.
And the whole idea is that a lot of people come to the events and they wonder how they could stay connected after
Yeah.
the events. And they thought, like, oh, I want to go grab a coffee with that cool person that I met at the event. How do I do that? And so I wanted to provide a space outside of just the events for people to nurture those relationships. And so it honestly has become like a family online. And I kind of call it an online sanctuary, like a place you want to hang
Yeah.
out on the internet, because I think we're all really overwhelmed with Zoom calls and all the things we've gone so digital in the past few years, especially during the pandemic. But I
Yeah.
want this to be a place where you come and you fill your cup and it's not just about building your business. Like, yes, we have entrepreneurs in there and you'll feel inspired, but I don't want people to come in there and think that they have to catch up on something or that they're falling behind. It's like, no, this is a space that you come where you hang out, you can be yourself. You're not worried about like posting a reel or needing to like produce anything or act a certain way. It's just like, we'll welcome you in as if you're part of our family. So I call it the
Yeah.
ESC family, and people have taken on that meaning with it. And so through that, I organize a lot of events, whether it's in person or virtual. We have a cookbook club that's part of it. We have a book club that's a part of it. We have like members that will organize their own meetups with each other to go like grab a movie or grab a coffee and hang out. And so it's just taking shape to be this movement of people who are really looking to change the way that they live and fall in love with their lives again.
No, I love that. And have you faced any like challenges within your business, and have you had any like learning curves that you can share?
Oh my gosh, so many, so many. I was like, I mean, I had the business through the pandemic, so
Yeah.
that was my biggest challenge. Through the hardships, I always say comes some form of silver lining. You just can't see it in the moment. And so for me, through the pandemic, I mean, I obviously was running in-person events. I was doing hundreds up until that point. I think I'd done 300 events in 3 years.
Wow.
And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to pause everything. And that obviously was scary. I think it was a bit of a welcome break because I was just
Yeah.
operating at such a crazy capacity. But that's the time I actually wrote my book. So it really ended up being this like beautiful time that I was gifted. And I don't actually know if I would have done that had that not happened. So that was a
Mhm.
huge moment where I realized like you have to embrace the ebbs and flows of things and it will all work out if you truly stay aligned to your mission. And I think it's
100%. Yeah.
really easy to like see what other people are doing on the internet, or if you see a brand that you love and you're like, oh, I got to do that too. But if you stay true to who you are and what your intention was at the beginning, or your deep why as to why you're doing something, then I think you can sort of navigate your way through all of the challenges. Like for me, people think, she launched a membership community now. Wow, like she just got all these members overnight. It's like, no, I've been building this business for
Yeah.
7 years and I've gone through so many iterations of it. But what I did, and I stayed consistent through it, is that I took people along that journey. So through every evolution, through every pivot, I would voice it. I would talk about it on Instagram. I would like share that journey with people. And I think that's why people trust me. So then when I launched the community, it was like, oh, yep, I know what you're about. I know what you represent. I want to be part of that. And I think that's what you have to do when you're building a brand, is you have to have a really deep why, and you have to communicate it to people so that it doesn't really matter what you're selling. They just believe in what you're offering.
Yeah, and I think also for you, for example, when I got the email, I obviously looked at your Instagram and stuff. And I think for like your content and what you post too, you can really like feel your personality through your content. And I think that's really important. A lot of people that are business owners don't really do that, or their face is not really the face of their business. And I think that's important because it just shows who's behind it and it's like more relatable and like you can connect more, I think.
Totally. That's such a good point, because there was a time in my business, probably when I was running the events and I first started, where I wasn't showing myself as much. And I think also Instagram was different. It wasn't as much
Yeah.
about personal branding, but after a while, people wanted to know the humans behind the business. And it was when I started showing up that I realized I am the business and the business is me. Like it really is a reflection of me. So, I'll showcase what I'm doing on a weekend. Or the other day I posted that like I set up a little cafe in my house and I turned my living room into a coffee shop. I've been doing that for years. And it's funny because it's actually become trendy now, but
Yeah.
it's an activity in the book. And I wrote that 4 years ago and I've been doing it since then. And so people see that I truly am living what I am preaching. So I want people to see that it's by example. This is not like a formula where I tell you what to do and you just figure it out, and I'm
Yeah.
not living that way and I'm not aligned to it. I think everything I do post, I'm showing up authentically. I really do live that way and I'm staying aligned to it, which is what I think differentiates brands that make it, or brands that don't, or brands that really have that strong consumer affinity or community, because people can see through and they
Yeah.
realize it, whether they meet me in person, whether they meet me online, whether they read my book, or whether they're in my community. I'm the same all
Yeah.
throughout, and you'll see that consistency.
Yeah, for sure. And going off that, your book, Beautiful Every Day is a Guide to Living in the Here and Now. What key messages do you hope people get from reading it? And what was like the big inspiration for you to sit down and be like, I want to write a book?
I've known for a long time that I wanted to write a book. Like when I was younger, I actually used to write these little like stories. I would read a lot. I was reading like a book a week when I was
Okay.
young. And so I've always loved the idea of writing. Also working for Indigo Books and Music in
Yeah.
Canada. I worked there for 4 years and I always had loved walking to a bookstore and thinking, oh, one day I'd love to have my book in a
Mhm.
bookstore, and just that feeling of a book and holding it. So all those things, like I knew I would, I didn't necessarily know what it would be about, but I had ideas along the way. This one specifically, it really was leading up to the pandemic, when I realized, all these people would come to my events and have a really great time. And they would say they wanted to have that feeling all the time. Like they wanted their lives to be really rich and fulfilling in terms of just feeling nourished and feeling like they are taking care of themselves. And I didn't want it to be just another wellness book. So
Yeah.
the idea was born to this whole idea of romanticizing your everydays. We have this life, we can live for the big moments, which are great, the vacations, moving houses, getting a new job, like getting married, all the like milestone things we
Yeah.
might want in our life. But what about the in-between moments where it's just a regular Monday and we don't just want to be busy working? We want to like actually do things that make us feel like our life is fulfilling. So the entire book is filled with activities that you can do on any day of the week at any time, using the things that you have in your home. You can do it on your own or with a friend, but it's all about making every day beautiful so that you can feel like those little moments add up to the big things in life, that when you look back, you think, wow, my life is actually full of really magical moments that became memories.
I love that. I definitely should read that because I was telling my therapist this. I struggle with living in the present so much. I'm always thinking about the past or the future. And it's
Yeah.
like so hard. And I feel like in society too, nowadays, everyone's like just thinking about what's next and like what their next goal is or anything like that. So it's so hard for me to just be like here and present.
Yes, and that's why we add that line about it being a guide to living in the here and now,
Mhm.
because we do that. It's like you're thinking about that next big project or the next thing you want to be doing, or even
Yeah.
just tomorrow. And it's like, wait, why can't I take a moment to just like breathe, ground myself, and not necessarily do it in a way where it's like, yes, okay, you can meditate and do these things,
Yeah.
but sometimes you could just do a fun activity like turning your house into a little cafe, and all of a sudden it's an experience, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I was really present throughout that. I actually like had a really good time setting it up or pouring myself a nice coffee or brewing a cup of tea. Like those little moments can be so magical and beautiful, and they really can ground you without you having to like consciously think about how they're going to ground you. So
Yeah.
that's why the book is full of those kinds of activities that you can do, kind of call them recipes for just living a beautiful life.
I love that. And what was kind of the writing process? How long did it take you to start it, finish it, and then get it to publishing?
Oh my God, it's like 4 years.
Okay.
It's wild. I definitely did not realize how long it takes to write a book. I think the writing was actually the easiest for me, maybe because it came naturally and I was just like in
Mhm.
a state of flow and I was going through it. So it took about a year and a half to write
Okay.
out all the activities. But then there was the designing, the editing, getting it printed, like all the steps. And so end to end, it's about 4 years. So I was so ready to like birth it into the world. I
Yeah.
felt like it was this baby that I'd been carrying with me for so long. And now it's like, oh, I have this physical thing that I can't believe is real, but that people can actually like hold and flip through and reference. And it's very timeless. So I want it to live on and be passed on for generations, because I just think it's something that has so much heart, but it's not about it being trendy. It's about it being something you can carry with you forever. So yeah, long process, but one that I think will withstand time.
Yeah. And do you think you would ever write another one?
Oh, that's a good question. I do. I definitely don't want to say I never would, because although the process was pretty grueling, I
Yeah.
think I'm always full of ideas. So I've already had like ideas on what another book could be or a creative project that I'd want to do. I thought about even like series in terms of TV shows or docu-series ideas. So yeah, I definitely think that there's something there in the future. I would also love to do something around food and food focus, specifically experiences around food. I think people
Mhm.
love to gather over food and it brings
Yeah.
people together. So yeah, I definitely have ideas mulling on that, but
Mhm.
it'll have to be the right place, the right time, and being multi-passionate. I definitely have to like focus in on, what's this season of my life bringing for me. And right now it's the membership community, and I just launched this book, but for sure I would love to do another project one day.
Yeah, I love that. And going off that, you're very big on intentional living. What does that mean to you? How does it impact our like everyday life and our well-being?
Yeah, intentional living to me is all about putting thought and care into the moments that are in front of you and ahead of you.
Mhm.
I think it's so easy to be sort of mindless in the way that
Yeah.
we're doing things these days. And I think a lot of that has to do with our relationship with tech, right? It's our phones are tied to us, and it's so easy for us to pick them up when we have like even a split second where it's
Yeah.
like that gap is not filled and there's like a split second of silence, or you're in a line at a grocery store, or you're waiting around for a bus, like whatever it is, it's right there. And I think going back to reclaiming our time is part of intentional living. For me, it's about making sure that I'm in control of that
Yeah.
time and I'm putting the thought into it, not having some external thing like a social media app control me and my time. I don't love that feeling. And I think a lot of people can relate to after like a doom scroll session and you're like, where did my time even go? Like, what did I even watch? I don't even know how I ended up
Yeah.
here. That feeling is not a good one. I rarely hear people coming off of social media being like, I feel so good and rejuvenated. It's usually like, I feel depleted and anxious, and I don't know where my time just went. So I
Yeah.
think intentional living these days has a lot to do with how are you carving out those moments of time? How are you filling it with things that actually light you up and not deplete you? And how are you making sure that you're the one in charge of something and that you're not allowing external things to be in charge of you?
Mhm. Going off tech and everything, do you ever deal with the struggle of kind of shutting off and like turning off all that because a lot of your business is online? Like for me, my business is totally online. So sometimes I have struggles like turning off or like stopping to work or just being like, okay, like Amanda, like just stop. Like sometimes I catch myself at night, like working at like 10 p.m. I'm like, I can't be doing this all the time. So do you
Yeah.
ever struggle with that and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I definitely struggle with it. I mean, last night I was working till 11 p.m. because I'm excited right now and I'm
Hmm.
building up the momentum of the community. So I think there's a time and a place for periods like that. So for example, last night, if I'm working at 11 p.m., am I doing it because I'm feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and I feel like I
Hmm.
need to catch up? Or am I doing it because I'm full of ideas and I'm just
Yeah.
like have this buzz of energy that I'm excited to be working on something? So there needs to be like perspective when it comes to stuff like this because it's really easy to fall into that trap. But creating some sort of like boundaries with all of it is super key. Like, I know, for example, that I have to create some boundaries around social media. And so, even like when I take a vacation, I know there should be days where I'm completely logged off because if I don't do that, then I'm not going to feel replenished when I come back and I'm not going to feel like full of inspiration because I won't have rested. And so I've done it many times where I've actually, even over the holidays, like the Christmas holidays, I'll take like 5 days off and I just won't post because I know it's pretty quiet and I can do that.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily need to keep up with what everyone's doing over the holidays. I'm like, that's a time for me to rest, to go inward, to like have time with family and just really enjoy myself. And I also am trying to build my business in a way that reflects the things that I am constantly trying to inspire people to do. So, for example, with the community, I don't necessarily want members to be hanging out online all day in the
Yeah.
community and even like on calls. When I do a virtual gathering, I try and keep it under an hour. I don't think we need a ton of screen time, but I do love the idea of connecting. Like it gives us the ability to
Yeah.
do like this. So that's great. But I also don't want them there for hours on end and then not actually living their real life. So I try and make sure that I'm matching my business offerings to my own personal values and beliefs. And so even
Yeah.
on weekends, I'm not in my community all day, like posting within there, and I'm not encouraging members to do that. I actually want them to go offline, use the tools with the community, but then go offline and go live your life. And so I'm trying to
Yeah.
build a business that really reflects that.
No, I think that's super important, especially like with the whole like burnout that people experience nowadays. Like for the podcast, for example, I just took like 3 weeks off because I felt myself just being so drained and like not in it anymore. And I was like, okay, like
Uh,
I'm forcing myself to do things. So I took a break and now like it's my first week back and I just feel like more motivated and energized for it. So I think people need to realize that sometimes for your business or whatever, like taking breaks is essential.
Yeah, I love that you recognize that because I think carving out those breaks, that's an example of intentionality. Like knowing what you know now, you can plan for that and predict
Yeah.
for that. So you can say, "Oh, I actually feel really good when I take those periods off and then I can come back to it with full energy." And I think, you can actually call them sprints. So I know a lot of successful
Hmm.
entrepreneurs that do things in sprints. It's like, yeah, I'm going to push because I have a launch or I have an exciting project I'm working on or I want to
Hmm.
get, 8 podcast episodes recorded and
Yeah.
you do it. But then you scale back and you take the time that you need to rest and rejuvenate and actually come back to it so you can feel rested and feel like, okay, I'm ready to dive in and not deplete yourself and burn out. Because if you're operating at that capacity, then you're not going to get to do anything well. You're definitely
Yeah.
going to feel like you're running on like 40% of what your capacity probably actually is if you felt like you rested.
100%. And we're talking a lot about community and stuff. If someone's listening to this right now and they feel like they lack community or struggle to find a community where they fit in, what advice would you give to them?
There's so many things right now around community because I do think we're feeling lonelier than ever. I think people are more
Mhm.
isolated than ever. I think a lot of that has to do with being online and social media. So
Yeah.
my whole thing is like IRL there is unmatched. You cannot experience what you do online the same way that you can in real life. And sometimes you do need the energy of being in person to actually refuel.
Yeah.
It's a different energy. You feel the energy of different humans. There's a reason why being in community helps us live longer. It's like part of the blue zones and why people are living longer. It's because they have really strong communities. And so one of the things I would say is make sure that if you're being invited to in real life things, you're not saying no just to then go hang out on your phone and like
Yes.
scroll social media. It's like if you have a reason that you really don't want to go, fine, respect yourself. I believe in that, but don't just do it for the sake of being like, I'm not really feeling it, and then go do something instead that makes you feel not so great,
Yeah.
because then you're not actually helping yourself in any way. It would be better to go to the social thing and get a little bit of human interaction. So, firstly, say yes to invitations. The second thing is to actually invite people yourself. So, when you have the option, choose in person. If it's a meeting, if it's a walk, go on like a walking meeting. If it has to do with work, if it has to do with friends, schedule things in person. So move that conversation from online to offline. And I feel like that
Hmm.
will really help you feel like you have a sense of community. And the third thing I would say is creating some form of tradition or ritual that allows you to get into community in a regular way. So that could be something like joining an activity, sports club, team, something that just lights you up and you feel excited about doing. So anything that's of interest, and you can explore your hobbies and curiosities and pick something that speaks to you. There's lots of organizations online that you can join,
Hmm.
or you can start something that's a tradition amongst your group of friends or with your partner, or even just like with a coworker, and feel like you have something in your calendar that's happening on a regular basis that holds you accountable. So for me, that was cookbook club. I started that 5 years ago with a group of 6 friends, and we were just like rotating, going in between each other's houses. We would cook from the same cookbook, and it was this really beautiful way to see each other once a month, get excited about something, and
Yeah.
have this sort of ritual and tradition built in. And it really gave us all a strong sense of community, and we became friends through it because we didn't know each other when it started. We didn't all know each other. And
Yeah.
so I built that into my membership community, but it's something that people can just do and start a cookbook club or start a book club or start something where it's a shared hobby, but you're keeping it in the calendar so you hold yourself accountable and you get excited.
Yeah. No, I love that. And if someone else is listening to this and they're interested in starting their own business, what advice would you give in that aspect?
Kind of what I was saying at the beginning about just doing it. So not getting overwhelmed with the thought
Yeah.
of like what it'll amount to or what the 5 year plan is or what it's going to look like in that many years. I think the hardest part about doing a business is starting it. And once
Yeah.
you're there, it's like, obviously maintaining it and growing it and all that comes with it. But that first step of just sort of ripping the band-aid off and being like, I have this idea. It might sound crazy, but I just want to do it. It's like, just do it, because you're going to talk yourself out of it. Like if
Mm.
someone told me 7 years ago, you're going to go through all these iterations, you're going to go through all these pivots, you're going to like change so many things, your branding, your website, like everything, I probably wouldn't have started because I would
Yeah.
have got so scared and overwhelmed by all of it, and it would have sounded crazy to me. So my advice is like when you're sort of young and fresh and able to just really early be in that stage, it's just really nice to just be able to do it without kind of getting bogged down by all the things that seasoned entrepreneurs know about and are, mindful of.
Yeah, and I feel like that's in every like aspect in every type of business. There's always changes. Like even the biggest corporations like Apple and stuff like that, like they're always changing. There's always pivots. So if someone goes into a business thinking that it'll be like all easy, like that's not the case 99% of the time. So I think if that's like scaring them, then it happens to everyone.
Exactly. I love that you brought that up because I always give the example of Starbucks, because a lot of entrepreneurs talk about branding a lot. Like I come from a marketing background,
Hmm.
so branding's super important to me. But I would like obsess over my brand and the colors,
Yeah.
and should I change the name and should I do this? And I think a lot of creative people get stuck in that phase. But I always attribute it to like the example of Starbucks, where Starbucks changed their logo years into their business. It was like they decided to change the logo, and it might seem like such a big deal, but once you're that established, it won't matter to people.
Yeah.
They'll adapt, they'll figure it out. People change their names, they change their taglines, they change their
Yeah.
brand colors. Like it happens all the time. And you don't realize unless you look back at the journey of a brand, all the iterations that they went through. And so, yeah, when something feels daunting or like you need to figure out the fix all formula of success forever and ever, it's never going to be like that. So, chances are things will change. So, just do something for now. And if it's good enough for now, you'll always figure out how you can evolve it over time.
Yeah, 100%. So the last part of our podcast, I asked people on Instagram to ask you questions, and I picked two of my favorite ones. So
Oh,
the first
fun.
one is, what's your favorite self-care activity?
I have so many. I
Me
have so
too.
many, but recently I've actually really liked journaling, but I do this thing called morning pages, if you've heard of it, where
Hmm.
are just journaling kind of nonstop for about 3 pages worth of stuff. So it doesn't actually matter what you're journaling about, but the whole idea is to just get your thoughts out. And it's a really beautiful practice. Like I put music on, I'll usually do it at my desk when there's sunlight, and I'll like light a candle. And it's just very therapeutic because it's getting all those thoughts in my head out on paper. And through that, there's a lot of clarity and realizations that come. And I find when you're just like too in your head or you're too overwhelmed, it's just a really nice way of giving yourself that.
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. No, I love that. I actually do that at night because I
Mm,
was well, I still kind of am the type of person that likes to keep a lot of things inside and like I just don't like talking about my feelings to people.
yeah.
So this was the only way that I was like, okay, like it's still technically in my head, but getting it out in some form. So I do that every night and it's just like refreshing and gives you like a clear mind.
I love that. It probably helps you sleep better too, because you're
Yes.
not thinking all those things right
Yeah.
before bed.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last question is, do you ever get nerves before hosting an event? How do you overcome that?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and I love that question. I now don't really get nervous because I've done like 500
Yeah.
events, but I will say that there's an energy that comes before. I'm usually just like kind of buzzing. So I definitely am
Hmm.
on edge a little bit because I'm like, there's new people coming in, it's chaotic, there's a lot of moving parts. And if you've ever hosted an event, you know it's not easy. Like I'm thinking about every single element
Yeah.
within that event. Like I'm really intentional about it. So it's like the music, the lighting, the food, the interaction between people, making sure I'm playing that role of the
Yeah.
host. I think I've sort of gone through it so much now that I've figured out my formula for hosting. I actually have a master class online too that teaches people how to host IRL events in a way that's
Hmm.
really intentional and beautiful, whether you're a business or whether you want to do it personally. But yeah, now I no longer get nervous. It's like an excited energy that
Yeah.
comes with it. And but afterwards I'm exhausted. So no matter what, I've realized that I need like literally the entire next morning off to just like reconvene and allow my energy to come back up because I do feel depleted just socially
I
after
can imagine. Yeah.
yeah, after hosting an event. So I've discovered that lately and I feel like that's helped me a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's all I had for you today. So thank you so much again for coming on and sharing all this. Before you leave, do you want to shout out any of your socials, where people can find you, where they can see your future events?
Sure. Yeah. The best place to find me on social is on Instagram at Imbiria, Embiria. You can also find me on my website at imbiria.ca, and you can find my book there. You can learn more about my community through social. And my favorite part is when I get DMs. So if you ever want to chat, I am in my DMs and I love connecting with people directly. So just send me a message if you want to learn anything more about me, and I'll introduce you to all the other things as part of the Imbiria world.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I really do hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to go follow Palak on all her socials. Go show her some love, support. And if you want to follow me, please don't be shy. You can either follow me at Behind the Girl Boss or at It's Amanda Wan. You can check out my YouTube channel, It's Amanda Wan. I post every single week on there. And the podcast is also posted on there. And don't forget to leave a review, a rating, subscribe, follow wherever you're listening to this on. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.